Would you still trust a scientific bike fit if 50 experts couldn't agree on what perfect even looks like? I've coached riders who've spent thousands chasing precision, lasers, motion capture, pressure maps, all promising the exact position that will make them faster or pain-free. The numbers looked scientific until you realized the science stopped where the human judgment began. So today, we're looking at the bike fitting industry's hidden secret. Not the tools, not the angles, but the humans using them. We'll start with what the research actually shows, then unpack why this happens, and finally, I'll give you a simple checklist to help you tell the difference between genuine expertise and confident guesswork. So let's dig into what the studies found and see just how deep this problem really goes. Most riders book a fit for one of two reasons: to get rid of pain or to get faster. The promise sounds simple. A professional fit will fix those problems scientifically, precisely, once and for all. It feels like the final answer, but recent research tells a different story. One study asked more than 50 professional fitters to analyze the same short video of a cyclist. They all used the same tools, yet their measurements didn't match. In other words, give the same rider the same data to 50 experts and they'll still see something different. That's the human side of bike fitting, and it's a lot less exact than the marketing makes it sound. And that's not what you expect after paying hundreds of dollars, right? So, if it's happening on a small scale, a handful of professionals giving different answers for the same rider, you have to wonder, how deep does this go? Is it just a few fitters working differently, or is there something built into the system itself? Here's the thing. It's an unregulated industry. There's no formal qualification to become a bike fitter, and that lack of consistency shows up again and again in studies. That's what researchers wanted to understand in another study, not through theory or marketing, but through real riders in real studios. In 2019, researcher Joachim Brackerveld and his team did something clever. They took 3 experienced road cyclists and they sent each of them to 9 different bike fitting studios across Belgium. All of the studios were reputable, all used professional tools and trained fitters, and each was told to find the optimal road position for the same rider. When the results came back, they didn't match. Saddle height, setback, reach, handlebar drop, they all shifted, sometimes by a centimeter or more from one studio to the next. On paper, that might sound tiny, but in practice, it changes hip angle, knee extension, and how a rider loads their weight onto a bike. In other words, the same rider on the same bike was told to ride in 9 different optimal positions. Not because anyone did a bad job, but because fitting isn't a formula, it's interpretation. And that's the real insight here. What these studies and others like them really show isn't that precision is overstated. It's that the language of bike fitting has a secret power. It makes us feel like we're looking at science, even when we're really just hearing opinion. Why? Because the story around fitting borrows these 3 tricks. The same 3 that make any idea sound unquestionable. First, it wears the aura of science. Numbers, angles, lasers, then it speaks with a tone of law. Never do this, always do that. And it's delivered with confidence and authority. If you put those 3 together, and even a guess can start to sound like a guarantee. That's why this next part matters. Because once you learn to spot that pattern, you'll never hear a bike fit the same way again. The problem isn't bad intent, it's incentive. Certainty sells better than complexity, and cycling position, it is complex. When you dig into the methods and the citations, you mostly find personal heuristics, new rules replacing old ones. Forget knee angles. Symmetry is everything. Everyone needs arch support, midfoot, soles endurance. Each one sounds absolute. Almost none come with proof. So what these studies remind us is that precision feels more like a craft, even when it's packaged to look scientific. Good tools in bad hands still give bad outcomes. And that's the real secret. The illusion of certainty comes from mixing science terms, law-like rules, and guru confidence, and mistaking that mix for proof. Yesterday, I spoke to an athlete who said, "I've got all of this information, all the information in the world, but I can't cut through the noise to find my specific path." A good bike fitter should help you make sense of the noise, not add to it. But that only happens if they're the right one for you. Because if they're selling certainty in a field built on variability, you're not buying expertise, you're buying a story. So let's flip that. I don't want to give you another rule. I want to give you a way to test the rules, because the truth is messy, but it's testable, and that's hopeful. And by the end of this, you'll have a few quick checks that cut through the noise and help you figure out what actually works for you. Now, here's the funny thing about bike fitting. Everybody says that it's personal, but the moment someone finds a method that works, they start turning it into a system. Frameworks, courses, rules, and that is human. The danger is when the system forgets that it started as intuition. That's when art starts pretending to be science again. So before you pay for a promise or follow a formula, here is a short checklist, a few questions that can help you see through the marketing to what's really going on underneath. 1. Does the fitter rely on one piece of tech or one philosophy? If every answer starts with the same tool, it's not personal, it's templated. 2. Do they reject all systems but then sell one of their own? That's not hypocrisy, it's the loop. Everyone wants to turn experience into a method. Just recognize it when you see it. 3. Do they make universal promises? 10% more power. Everyone needs arch supports. Good practitioners talk about ranges, not guarantees. If a claim scales to everyone without data, treat it as a hypothesis. 4. Do they explain why something should work? Or do they just tell you it will? Explanation builds trust and certainty sells. 5. If you're told you have a leg length difference, how was it measured? Imaging, functional testing, or just a look? Rule out spinal or muscular causes before you shim. 6. Will this recommendation trigger a shopping spree? New pedals, cranks, bars, insoles. Start with the smallest testable, reversible change first. You don't have to interrogate anyone. Just notice the pattern, because once you do, you'll start seeing the difference between people who sell rules and people who teach reasoning. And that leads me to the final and most important point. Bike fitting, like training, like nutrition, like cycling itself, is full of paradoxes. The more we try to standardize it, the more individual it becomes. And the more individual it becomes, the harder it is to sell. So the goal isn't to find the perfect system or guru, it's to stay curious and ask better questions, respect experience, but demand receipts. Because once you understand how the game works, you realize you have more power in your cycling journey than you think. So in the next video, I'll show you how to turn that understanding into results on the bike.